Welcome to Deep Thought. Thoughts about the Superman, Part 1. Yeah, this is going to be a three-parter, y'all. Because I'm going to tell you what. I'm more philosophical anyway. I'm always thinking about something. One of the things I've thought about since I was young was the concept of Superman. And not like, the comic book Superman or anything, some man flying and got superhuman strength. Ain't never really been a big fan of that. No, the Superman I'm talking about is that man who is above the crowd, above the herd, right? And, this joint was going to be three parts because there were different angles I wanted to get into. Now, the first one is more like that guy who's just superior to, or that being who's just superior to the average man. But looking at it from more the eugenic thing. Because people, if you look at the history of eugenics, it was all about creating that Superman, right? That Superman. Indeed, it was definitely a part of Nazism, right? That was a big part of eugenics. And actually, I'm going to tell you what, when you talk about eugenics, right? The Nazis actually got a lot of ideas from the United States. Eugenics was a big movement in the early 20th century. It was a big movement. They had forced sterilizations and everything. And I'm going to tell you what, there's a PDF that I have, and I've never got a chance to really go through it. Never had time. I need to, though. I got it, had it for years, but it was actually a talk about eugenics within the black community. That's how deep it was. It wasn't just a white against black thing, but in all the communities, the white community, they sterilized millions of what they considered defective people. What they considered defective. Indeed, if we still had that idea, or somebody came up with it now, some people who would probably be seen as being on the autism spectrum will probably get sterilized or, mentally challenged or even physically handicapped, right? Physically disabled in some way or another. That's how it was deep in this country at one point, even in the black community, right? But, you think about that Superman concept because, you think about it more from, like I say, the more realistic, right? I think, one of my favorite characters in the Star Trek universe is the character Khan Noonien Singh. He was played in a TV show, in a Star Trek episode, Space Seed, and then in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, by Ricardo Montalban, and then more recently when they kind of remade all that, kind of rebooted everything, Benedict Cumberbatch, right? Who, which is interesting because Khan was supposed to be a Northern Indian, and, Ricardo Montalban was Mexican, and Benedict Cumberbatch, he wasn't even close to Indian, right? But that's another controversy right there. But anyway, we won't get into it. I'm looking more at the character. Now, the character of Khan was a eugenic Superman. Through genetics, he was made to be physically and mentally superior, right? And that concept that's a big concept in how they did it. Interesting, when I was watching Space Seed, and y'all know how I just flow with stuff on here, the episode Space Seed, and I don't know if a lot of people picked it up, but I watched it recently, and I was like, wait a minute, they doing yoga moves, how they posing and everything. It was deep. Gene Roddenberry was deep with his stuff, right? And actually, you do have in some Hindu traditions, and I'm saying this from as an outsider looking in, that concept of becoming a superior man through yoga and other practices, right? And I might get more into that in part 3 of this, not necessarily yoga, but the overall becoming a superior man. But when you think about the first type of Superman that is really more common, not the Clark Kent Superman, Kal-El Superman, but, the Khan, that physically stronger man, with superior intellect. Like I said, that was the thing, and I can't remember the exact term that was used in Nazism, but they were actually trying to create an Aryan super race. They would actually, like women from other cultures who had that blonde hair, blue eye thing were actually kind of conscripted to have babies in Germany, right? But, you think about that that physical thing, that superior man. He's stronger than everybody, faster, smarter, and it's like, it's a good, it's good for stories and everything. It's good for stories to rise above. Indeed, it's still elements of it out there. You actually got movements. There's actual movements that kind of focus on doing that, right? Focus on doing that. Like, these things are important. These things are about it. And it's just interesting because I think what it is, it's within humanity is an inner desire to evolve to a better level. And not necessarily in a spiritual sense, because you do have spiritual traditions that focus on evolution. But within the Western concept, as in the Western culture, is looked at, the things that are important is the physicality and the mental stuff, the intellect that's supposed to be higher. Indeed, if you look at it, like right now, we're not going through one of the big IQ debates. We're not going through the big IQ debates, right? But, that was a big part when they do go through it, having that superior IQ and everything like that, right? Indeed, you got organizations such as Mensa that focus on high IQ, right? And then, of course, with the sports thing, if you look at the Olympic movement, it's about being bigger, stronger, faster. Now, imagine that. But, imagine that. But then what is that? What's driving that? One thing in the spirit of humanity is always that thing about becoming better, growing better, right? And it's always been there. It's always been there, the evolution. Now, so, people will say, like, yeah, these people are smarter and everything and, better shape. Indeed, I've seen, like, talks about that in a couple of books that dealt with the, so-called, not the 1%, but the 9.9%. In these couple of books, they didn't focus, it wasn't focused exclusively on that. It wasn't. It's focused exclusively on the building thing, right? But more on certain groups of people just being smarter and physically in better shape. Indeed, two of the books are. Hold on for a second. Two of the books were Coming Apart: The State of White America, 1960 to 2010 by Charles Murray. And then The War on Normal People by Andrew Yang, former Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang. And the books weren't focused exclusively on that whole better people, but there was like a paragraph or two in each book talking about how people at a certain level were smarter and in better physical shape. And I thought that was interesting because it lends to that whole thing of just being smarter and stronger, And and I'm gonna tell you what. Getting back to like Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek, there was Gene Roddenberry actually had a couple other series that he had ideas about and were actually produced after he passed away. One was called Andromeda. And one of the main races of humans in the Andromeda series were called Nietzscheans, and their whole culture, their whole subspecies of humanity was based on being basically Superman. Like they were stronger. They thought they were smarter, not really, but it was all about being better. Like their whole culture was about like mating and mating right, and alphas mating and all of that, just being better. So, you think about it, right? That concept is there in a way, like not the Clark Kent Superman, but more like the Khan Noonien Singh. So it's something to think about. I always think about that though, because it's always there. It's little. People ain't talking about it as much, right? And it goes through periods where people get into, especially the IQ thing. But it's always that drive to evolve. So I'll have more on it tomorrow. I'll talk to y'all. Peace.